When the Lord brought back the captives to Zion, we were like men who dreamed. Our mouths were filled with laughter, our tongues with songs of joy. Then it was said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. The Lord has done great things for us, and we are filled with joy. Restore our fortunes, O Lord, like streams in the Negev. Those who sow in tears will reap with songs of joy. He who goes out weeping, carrying seed to sow, will return with songs of joy, carrying sheaves with him. Thus far, the reading of God's word. One of these questions that we seem to ask a lot these days is, who are you? Who am I? Who am I? We live in a day and age where people devote a lot of personal energy to finding themselves, to understanding who they are. And for many, this is a deep and difficult question. Who am I? It's often one that we don't answer easily. And we don't necessarily want to be reduced to a few simple answers. We are complex people. Knowing who we are takes time. And a lot of times we never learn to fully know ourselves or even anyone else. And that's maybe one of the wonders of discovery in ourselves and in relationships. But if pressed, if you had to boil the essence of yourself down to one or two short statements, what would you say? How would you answer the question, who am I? In today's day and age, much of our identity and sense of self seems to be tied up with our work. We might say, well, I'm an accountant. I'm a farmer. I'm a builder. I'm a housewife. I'm a teacher. And yet if I were to think of myself and say, I sell real estate, or I used to be a pastor, or at once it tells you a lot about who I am, but at the same time it says almost nothing. It tells you nothing of my personality, the events that have shaped my life, my passions, my hobbies, the people who are close to me. Simply saying, I'm a pastor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a nurse, a farmer, teacher, says something and nothing at the same time. You can even say things, I'm an introvert, I'm an extrovert. All of these different personality traits, we could talk about them, and yet there is always something about ourselves that seems uniquely me, that is very hard to put into words with others. It's not an easy thing to answer well, this question, who are we? And yet we sense its importance. Knowing who we are will tell us a lot about, how we will react to life. Who we are determines how we respond to the stuff of living. One of the beauties of the Hebrew language is that it's very concrete and vivid. There are very few adjectives. An adjective is an abstract word used to describe a quality. And English is a wonderful language because it's absorbed so many other languages along its development that it is a language filled with many subtle and similar adjectives that you can use to apply to various descriptions in very finite and subtle ways. But in Hebrew, though, if you want to describe somebody as strong, you wouldn't say they're strong, which is kind of an abstraction. You would talk about him, he's like my right arm. Because everybody knows that everybody's right-handed and your right arm is your stronger arm. He's like my right arm. He's stronger. And if you're angry, you wouldn't say that I'm angry. You would say, well, his face is red, or his face burns, right? You see, so you get the Hebrew language is very vivid and concrete in that way. Everything is very grounded. So when a Hebrew describes themselves, they don't use a lot of abstract ideas. They would never say to themselves, I'm an introvert, I'm an extrovert. Instead, the language is rooted in real experiences, things that are very tangible that they can feel, taste, and touch as much as possible. Who they are is rooted in their experiences. Who God is, and their experience of God, is rooted not in abstract theology, but in their encounter, in their experience of God. See, this is why it's so distressing for the Hebrew when God hides his face and they cannot experience his presence. When they're not experiencing the presence of God in their lives, it's as if he ceases to exist for them. The thought of leaning on abstract theological teachings, ideas, to support their faith was something almost completely foreign to them. God is experienced or he's not there. He's not a set of ideas. He's someone that you are with or you are with not. He's there or he's not. And all of these things, God, who he is and who they are all rooted in their journey with God. And this is why the Old Testament is so much about the people's experience of God. The stories and songs that they tell or sing, their interactions with the God. And this is why the story is so important. I mean, if you think about it for yourselves, even though we live in a very abstract, type of society with all kinds of ideas and abstraction, when we get together as a group of people and we bond ourselves together, what do? You get a group of friends together and you sit around over a meal, a couple of beers or a glass of wine, and what do you start doing? You start to tell stories. Remember when we did this? Remember when Bob did this? Wasn't that hilarious? And you start to tell the stories. You tell the stories of the funny things, of the sorrows that you've shared, the things that you've journeyed together, the struggles that you've had. You tell these stories. That's what binds you together, is this shared sense of experience. And that's really where the Hebrew mind is rooted, their experience is rooted in their interactions with God, their story with God. So, and as we look here at Psalm 126, especially in the Hebrew, and it's interesting in terms of Hebrew verb forms, which you don't really... Hebrew doesn't really have a strong sense of past and present in their verb forms. They will flip from one to the other to begin sentences. So you will use the future form when you're starting a sentence or paragraph, and then you'll flip to the past form in the middle of the paragraph. And who knows whether you're talking about the future or the past. I mean, you're telling a story, everybody knows that it's in the past. But when you're in poetry, when you're talking about the past or the present, you're just talking about an experience. So it's there, and it's lived, and it's experienced, it's mine. So whether it's past or present, it's who I am. So who we were is who we are, and who we are is who we were, and who we are is who we will be, and it's all kind of bundled together. This is my experience. Who we were even a generation or two ago shapes who we are today. The experience lives on in the community and defines everything about they are. It's that group of people sitting around telling stories. And this is really what the Psalms and the stories of the Old Testament do. They give voice to who they are. So who are they? Well, it's a psalm that's delivered in a sense of trouble. And it's really ambiguous about the time frame. They're looking here where the Lord brought back the captives to Zion. But then, I hope the sermon wasn't that bad. It's all right. When we look at the psalm, you look at the front, and they seem to be saying, well, the Lord has brought us back the captives to Zion. But then in the last half of the psalm, they're crying out to restore our fortunes, O Lord. So it's a psalm that is lived in both hope, dreams, but also a present reality. They're living a future that they haven't experienced yet. They're talking about it as if it's real. So who are we? Well, when the Lord brought back the captives to Zion, we were like men who dreamed. So they're picturing themselves returning from captivity. That we're going to live the dream that we are having right now. So who are we? We are like men who dreamed. Now, a dream in the Old Testament is a powerful and potent thing. A dream could be about the future, hopes and dreams, but it could also reveal something about today, that God speaks to you in a dream and tells you about your current circumstances, reveals to you the state of your relationship with Him and with what's going on. A dream was a dream of salvation. They were dreaming of salvation. The Lord brought back the captives to Zion. We're people who dreamed this dream, a dream of salvation. They were a people living the consequences of their choices, living the consequences of their sin. And now in exile, they dreamed of home. They dreamed of restoration. They dreamed of being fully the people of God again, the way that they were when they were in Zion. The dream is a song of faith. The dream is a song of hope. They are a people who dream. They are people who dare to dream, to long to see that dream become a reality. This is a powerful thing among the people of God. It's a dream of hope, a dream of salvation. In this dream, their mouths are filled with laughter and their tongues are filled with joy. It's as if they're experiencing this restoration, this salvation already. Our mouths were filled with laughter. Our songs were joy. They are a people who hold on to the dream of salvation. And it is real. And God makes this dream real for them. And they were able to proclaim God has done great things for them. It's a vision that guides them and gives them hope. And the NIV in verse 3 reads, we are filled with joy. But in the Hebrew, it's more emphatic. We are rejoicers. So we are dreamers, first of all. It starts off, we are dreamers, but we are also rejoicers. It is this dream that inspires our joy. It is this dream that inspires our rejoicing. And it's one of the amazing things about the salvation of God. They're living the consequences of their sin, but they're dreaming of a day of restoration when everything is fully restored to them again. But because it belongs to God, it's God's work, our response, their response, is just to let joy rise up in their hearts. They're seeing this dream of salvation, and this dream of salvation is causing joy to rise up in their heart. God saves, and it is our role, their role, to be filled with joy, to be returned to Zion, to let the wondrous and amazing joy of that reality fill the whole of their lives, our lives, let it bubble up and express itself. You see, in so much of life, we are trying to accomplish things. We're serious and purposeful. We're working. We're disciplined, focused, and on task. But the message of God's salvation is that it liberates us from our own work. This is God's work. So because it's something that we don't do, that He does, we can let our masks and guards, all this effort and the organization, the focus, the purpose, we can simply let it all down and just be filled with joy. It's not something we have to strive or struggle to make happen. God gives it to us. This is the wonder. It's God's dream being made reality. We can just simply let go and rejoice with all of our hearts. And this really is the essence of Sabbath. That's really like a day of rest, is your declaration to the world, to yourselves, that I can stop working because God has done His work, and I can just rejoice in the fact that God has done His work. I can stop and just celebrate. Celebrate that the Lord has brought back the captives into Zion. that I'm living the dream. And as a result of living that dream, I am filled with joy that I am a rejoicer. And here they do it in front of the nations. See, God's salvation frees us from all our doing just to be joyful, to give glory to Him. And this is really one of the best testimonies that we can give to a dour and serious, easily offended, always outraged, politically correct, God-denying world, is just simply to be filled with the joy of salvation. Why are you so joyful and happy? Well, let me tell you about this wonderful dream I have. The world is a messed up place. But I have this dream from God. You know what? He sent His Son to die to make this dream a reality. There's going to be a time when everything is made new. And people won't hurt or bite or scrape each other. You won't have to live with the garbage and junk in your lives. You won't constantly fall down and sin again and again. Let me tell you about that. And this dream, it's made possible. And you don't have to do anything. All you have to do is just simply see it, believe it, and trust that it's coming. Just joy wells up in your heart. We are rejoicers. See, it's this sense of who they are that the psalmist falls back on when he, comes before the Lord in his present difficulties. When he gets to in verse 4, where he begins to really say, restore our fortunes, O Lord. It's redeem us as you did before. See, the psalmist wants God to act decisively, and, those who sow in tears will reap songs of joy. He who goes out weeping will carrying seeds to sow will return with songs of joy, carrying sheaves with him. This is the psalmist's hope and joy. He wants everything to be radically transformed. Right now we are struggling, we are in captivity, but I'm seeing this dream. We will sow in tears, we will reap in joy, we will go out with weeping, carrying seeds of sorrow to sow, and we will return with songs of joy. Let the streams bubble up in the desert. And we are, walking through the desert, Lord. We're thirsty, we're hungry, we're planting seeds of sorrow. Let it be transformed. Let us bring back a wonderful harvest of salvation. And this is a song of faith. It's a song of dreamers. And because they live this dream, they rejoice. The dream is that God can radically turn any situation around, any life around. God can take what is broken and sorrowing. God can take what is hurting and sinful. God can take what is struggling and defeated. He can turn it around in the kind of radical way that only God can do. God will bring the captives back to Zion. Now, you might say, well, that's not really my experience. I hear what you're saying, but all I see is my own struggle. I want to believe, I want to be free, but I can't seem to enter into this dream. But see, this is why the story of God and His people are told. Because there are those moments, and this is what the Hebrew understood so implicitly, is that, God has to be experienced. And sometimes when I'm not experiencing Him myself, I can gain in that experience by listening to the experiences of others. And this is really why we have the Scriptures. So we can listen to the experiences of salvation of those who go on before us. There's not some great divide between us and them. These stories are our stories. We are God's people. This is our history. These are our psalms. This is our story of salvation. See, and these stories tell us who they are. When we say, I believe, we're also saying that whatever story used to define the people of God is my story. And that this story defines who I am. So I came out of Egypt. I conquered the land. And then with I was sent into exile, but I was returned again. I was given the promises of salvation. I saw Jesus come. I was with the apostles when the gospel spread through the world. This is my story. See, we are this people. We are the dreamers. We are the rejoicers. And that's really part of what faith is about. The stories of Abraham, the Exodus, Joshua, David, Goliath, Elijah, and Elisha, Jesus, the apostles, Paul, Peter. These are our stories. Most importantly, the story of Jesus, how God came and lived among us and saved us by sacrificing himself on the cross. That's our dream. That's our story. This inspires our joy. The story is our story. And because we remember what God has done for us in the past, this is what inspires us to believe that it can happen for me as well too. That story can become my story. That I can begin to see this dream and enter into it. And that's really what faith does, is it allows a conduit to come, we might say. That's what being part of a people of God does, is it strengthens that dream for us, being part of a group of dreamers. See, and this is really who we are. We are a people who live in a sinful, broken world, who struggle with, tears of sorrow, those who are weeping and struggling. But at the same time, we are a people who dream, and you say God's dream. We have God's hope, his salvation. And even though many of us, this is one of the things about the modern age, is that it cuts us off, isolates us, squashes these dreams. Even if we wake up in the middle of our life, and just kind of scream, this is not who I am, this is not what I wanted to become, I wanted my life to be much more, or why am I like this? I didn't want to be mired in these behaviors. I didn't want to be trapped in this sin. Even if you're not, I didn't want to be on the treadmill of my career, just seeming like my life is slipping away, bean counter desk jockey. I didn't want to feel like I wanted another life. I wanted to be free. I want to be this person who dreams. And a psalm like this is a reminder. It's God tapping you on the shoulder, saying the dream still exists. Because of my salvation, you can dream. Life may have squeezed a lot out of you, and it was maybe hard for the exiles to do this, to have this dream, far away, living the consequences of their sin. But God is tapping you on the shoulder again today and saying, I have a dream for you. It may take a while to get there. There may be some tears to shed. You may be living in the desert now, sowing seeds of tears. But I have a dream for you. A dream of restoration. A dream of returning home. A dream of being free from your sins. A dream of living a life close and intimate with me because of my salvation. Grab hold of my dream for you that I paid the price to make happen. Be that dreamer. Be that person who, because of their dreams, because you share my dream for the world, you can rejoice. It is possible. Let God make streams of living water in the desert of your life. Don't be afraid, even if that's been squeezed out of you a few too many times. Don't be afraid just to let go and allow that dream to happen again. Come. Share the dream. Let God turn tears of sorrow into a harvest of joy. When people say, "Who are you?" you can say to them, "I'm a dreamer. I'm a dreamer. Let me tell you about my dream." You wouldn't know, because of this wonderful dream I have. I don't live it fully yet, but I've got this dream. You would not believe how happy and joyful my life is. Be that person. Amen.